So, hey everyone, welcome to the last session of the today's day. Welcome to the codebar festival. So, in this talk, we are going to talk about the how to get started with Python. Actually, yeah, here is a little bit about myself. My name is Gaurav. I'm a senior at Tego School in New Delhi, India, and I'm interested and working on Python, machine learning, and I'm a little bit about web, but I majorly focuses on machine learning. So, let's see. Okay, so here are the topics for the discussion. We are going to discuss a brief introduction to the Python, then moving ahead with why Python is my first choice and how you can get started with this. And then we are moving along what you can do with Python. And then we are moving along with the joining communities. And in the last, I am wrapping up with a quick summary. So this talk is not for a professional or if you know Python, actually, this was a very beginner who just wanted to get started in the Python. So I'm not giving any roadmap, actually. It's just a little bit of motivation and why you choose this Python and why you have to learn Python. Okay, so let's start. Here is introduction to the Python. So as we all of know that Python is the most popular programming languages, and we have also other programming languages such as C++ and Java. But why Python? So the question is, it's very versatile and very flexible. I personally use this Python, and it is my first language that I learned. So Python, you can use it for anything from building websites to automation to machine learning models and to building APIs. So it's a quite versatile. Okay, so here's an interesting thing, which why from where the Python names come. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about it. The name of this programming language exactly. So where did the name Python come from? So Python name come from Monty Python, when the creator of Python, and the creator of Python was actually Guido van Rossum. I hope I pronounced correctly. So when he was creating Python, he thought that the name Python was very short and kind of unique than other programming languages. So this is how Python was actually developed. Okay, now let's move ahead with why Python is my first choice. And it's pretty hard to decide, but here are the couple of points. First, it is very easy to learn, and it doesn't have a pretty much complex syntax. It's just of a lines, 4 lines, 3 lines type of context and syntax, and you don't have to write a bunch of code for that, but it depends totally on the project which you are building. Okay, so then we have 100 libraries and frameworks. As I said before, that it is a very versatile language, or you can use it for anything. So there are lots of libraries and frameworks available. You don't have to worry about anything. Then it's very versatile and flexible that I said earlier. Then we have it has a very readable and the maintainable code. It means that you don't have to, and you might get in deep into the error, but you get find a solution for that. And even the beginner, or I think the non-programmer can even read the Python code and he might be able to see what is actually running in Python. It's very similar to the English language. All right, so then we have a wide community support according to the Stack Overflow survey, and it is true yet. Yes, it's so. It is very true that Python has a very wide community, is whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on GitHub, whether it is on Stack Overflow, and there are lots of conferences happening over the in the Python. Okay, so let's deep dive into easy to learn. Yes, Python is very easy to learn, and most people yet says that it is their first languages. So be prepared for that. It is very easy. You don't have to deep dive the research into how to learn that. It's very easy. Just go to just Google it or go to any YouTube courses. You might get it difficult. It's not difficult. It's very easy, and it's a beginner friendly. I actually and it is actually my first programming language that I learned, and it is very easy to learn. Trust me. Okay, so now deep dive into the hundred of libraries. Yes, there's a number 137000 plus libraries. Yes, this is true. The Python is actually more than 137,000 libraries available, according to the interviewbit.com. Let's dive deep into for which field you can actually use Python and which library specifically. So for machine learning, TensorFlow and PyTorch, I especially uses TensorFlow and PyTorch for machine learning, and for web development, you can use Flask, Django, but moreover, I think Flask is very easy for me, and it depends on you. But Python is not actually working in the front end development; it is working on the back end side of the web. So you cannot use yet Python in the front end part. You might get very heavy in the server side part or in the back end part, and Django is the very popular among them, but it's a little bit of difficult. Okay, so then we have automation. Yes, you can also do automation with the Python. We have PyAuto GUI and a beautiful soup. Beautiful soup is basically the scraper. It's a website scraper. You can scrape any website and scrape any data from the website. And Python is also be useful in the case of data visualization, which you can do with Matplotlib and the Seaborn. And these are basically the very famous tool for doing data visualization in the Python. So you're not having any issues with it. Then we have scientific computing. You can do scientific computing with NumPy, and it's kind of difficult, but it's not very difficult. And yes, you can do a game development with Pygame. I also built one game. You can go through my GitHub. All right, so next we have it's versatile and flexible. Yes, I said that Python is very flexible, but I misses one thing, that is, yes, you can use it for even for hardware programming and kind of electronic programming. I don't know very much about that, but yes, you can use it for hardware programming, app development, web development. Specifically, you can't do more into the app development, but there is a library available in the Python which calls Kiwi. You can use it for app development, but it's not very fine for that. But yes, it's option available. All right, so you can use Python in the most of the cases. Okay, so then we have a readable and the maintainable code. As I said that Python is very easy, so it's interpreted. Before we see that, C++ has compilers. So there is a difference between compilers and the interpreters. Interpreters are different than compilers. The Python is an interpreted language, object-oriented, and it's very high level, and it's very simple syntax. I already mentioning that you don't have to do the very long research or kind of the take a fear of that, but it's very easy, trust me. Okay, so let's move on the interpreter. So what is it and how it is work? So just go to the python.org website and download the latest Python version available. And when you install it on your desktop, whether it is Windows, Mac, or Linux, you've seen that there is interpreter is already installed in your machine if you don't when you downloaded these Python from the your python.org website. And just simply open the idle and write Python code. It's automatically interpreted. You don't have to do the bunch of settings, but there might be a one setting. You can go over to the any YouTube video or any YouTube course. You might like this. Okay, so then we have coming back to the wide community support. Yes, as I said that Python has a very large community that contributes to the Python modules. But wait, as I said before that Python is very versatile. We can use for machine learning, we can use it for web development, but all libraries are built by the community of open source developer. Yes, they are open source. For an example, the Fast API is open source, and TensorFlow is also the open source Python library by Google. So it's very open source. Okay, now let's deep dive into the error. For an example, you're just getting started with Python and you have any error with it. So if you run into the problem, finding a solution is very easily. You just have to Google, and almost first and second website is your answer. But there is a fact that somebody has bound to run into the same problem. For an example, if you have a syntax error, syntax error is basically the line error if you have any mistake in your syntax. So you just copy the error and Google it. You might get answer with the Stack Overflow website or GitHub website. So it's very easy, but it's totally depends that if this problem is faced by another before. Okay, so how to get started? Here are a few tips. First, code every day. Build strong foundation. This is very important. Most beginner even misses that. Take breaks and don't worry about errors, and teach. This is kind of unique, but I explained this. Okay, so code every day. Let's start with be consistent or code every day. Yes, according to this study, for building a habit, you need to do the same thing consistently for at least 22 to 30 days. So to learn Python very effectively, I recommend you to code every day for at least half an hour. Or if you're unable to do, it's not a problem. Just revise the basics that you done earlier in the previous class, or read at least one or two articles. And if I talk about myself, I do all of these things in a single day. I write code for 30 minutes just to write a terminal program, and then revisit few basics and read at least one to two articles, or write at least one to two articles. There are lots of blogging platforms available. Okay, build strong foundation. And here's the most important. Yes, most beginners skip that part in order to compete with others. Firstly, you have to learn basics and then practice your acquired skills and then move ahead. Make sure that it takes time and you have to maintain your passion. Here's the basic roadmap which most beginners go first, learn basics, then they go ahead. No, this is not the way. First, learn basics, then build your strong foundation. Now go ahead. And how to build your strong foundation? You can actually practice Python in the various websites such as HackerRank, Geek First Geeks, and there are also paid versions available, but I recommend you to go for free to practice at least the basic questions for that and build few projects. So I'm going to the project section. Yes. So project section, yeah. So project section is very important. Even if you're doing any type of programming, I'm not generally speaking about the Python. I'm talking about all kind of programming languages. So project is very important. I definitely go over through the project section. So if you're very new, it might get difficult to build a complete end-to-end software solution or complete end-to-end project. But it is kind of a very easy to build at least a single project or a terminal project. It is very easy to build and it doesn't take you more time, more than half an hour. Or if you're very new, stick maximum 1 hour. And let's see how project can beneficial for you. For an example, let's say you build an 14 lines of Python code. You write the 14 lines of Python code, and you get an error in the 7th line or 8th line. The Python code actually stops that place. Just like you have to building right close, and Python code stops when you have an error. Just copy that error, go to the Google, and you might get solution. Then go ahead. And here, what you see that you're actually learning that how to build a specific components of a software in a single line, and you're not facing any issues with it, hopefully. Or if you have any issues with the project, just go to the YouTube, because there are millions of courses available in the YouTube, and there are lots of projects are also available. Okay, so now let's talk about taking breaks. So when dealing with errors or debugging, it's a new word. I'll explain it later. So taking breaks is a critical to having an effective study session. It's not for programming, but for general. If you are a school student, taking breaks is very critical. And to be the effective to study effectively, particularly when you have taken a lots of new information. As I said, that Python is very versatile, and there are lots of concepts in the Python that you need to learn. So for an example, you are starting today after this session, you might start with the installation guide, then the print function, then the variables, then conditionals, and you have a lots of concepts available. But I recommend you to take the notes, do step by step, don't miss any concept. If you it's very hard for you to explain, just go to the another course and check from there. If doesn't work for you, go to another course, because there are lots of courses available, but make sure that you clear every concept of the Python. Okay, step away from the computer for a little bit, go for a walk or play a physical game. It's very beneficial for you, trust me. Okay, here's a big slash. Even if you're worrying about the errors, don't worry, just Google it. Googling is not a mistake you're doing, and Googling is also the kind of part of the software engineering role. Or you can say, if you're a new programmer, Googling is not very hard. Okay, teach. Yes. Someone said that. I don't know who said that, but I remember that. The best way to learn Python, or the best way to learn something, is to teach it. But how? You can write a blog post. I usually write blog posts about that, recording videos. I make sure think you have a YouTube channel for that, and you are studying that. You are teaching in your YouTube channel, and whether it is in person like workshops for that, and give it piece a try. Trust me, teaching can blown up your experience and you're not having any issues with that. It's not difficultly make you the very powerful in the Python, but also in your soft skills, as soft skills are very necessary for the software engineering roles. Okay, so then where you can learn Python. So this is not a very hard question, and you might get answer in the various ways. So here's YouTube, and there's a lots of YouTube channels available. Just type in the search bar Python beginners tutorial, and I think the first or the second result is from Free Code Camp or from the Mosh programming Mosh actually. And there are lots of online courses available, whether you're from Coursera or any other digital platform, and in-person workshops, then boot camps. And boot camps are also works very fine if you want to learn a step by step or a complete language, not complete language exactly, but kind of a every information that you need. Then documentation. Yes, it is very necessary that if you are learning anything, you need to have a book of that. And documentation is actually the book of that programming language. But for Python, you don't have to worry about documentation. It's available on python.org website. Just getting the if you want to. And if I what I do about the documentation, that I personally learn from the documentation. It's very easy. No, it's not very easy to learn from the documentation, because documentation have every core concept of the programming language. So it's kind of scary when first time you are seeing the documentation, but it is very hard to learn from the documentation and to apply. But you are learning anything from the documentation, I can 100% sure that you are learning in the right way and you're not having any issues with it. Okay. Moving along with what can you do with Python? Here's a lots of link list available. Machine learning, web development, automation or scripting, data science, CLI development, DevOps, database system, web scraping. For machine learning, I personally do machine learning. It's very hard or easy, but you like it. Web development, I feel a little bit of difficulties in learning web for Python, and automation and scripting is very easy. Data science is included or excluded in machine learning. Then CLI development is also possible with the Python. So you don't have to worry about that. Then we have DevOps, database system. As I said, it is a server-side language. You can also use it for server-side language. And web scraping, and web scraping is, I think, is the most powerful tool of the Python, that you can scrape any data from the any website using Python libraries, such as Beautiful Soup and Scrapey. It's similar like that. And you can actually scrape the data from the website, and it's very fun. Let's try, do a try. Okay. So then we have joining communities. Joining communities is, I think, is the most of people not miss or misses that most people miss that part. Joining communities. Why? So the answer, if you want to grow as a developer, if you want to grow as a beginner developer, exactly, you need to go or join any community. It doesn't matter whether it's your local community, virtual community, or might be the anything is you want to community of the 4 people, 5 people, or 5 lakh people, 5 thousands of people. It doesn't matter. Be the part of community. How did the community benefits you? By providing mentorship. For example, you are having any issues with it, the community might have a mentees which can mentor these students. Then you can share the tools. I usually engage in the big community of the Python, and daily we are having the different types of libraries, and we are daily sharing the tools that we can make Python more dependable on us, and answering questions in the communities are very happen. Good online presence. Yes, to find the job after when you learn Python, finding a job is not very hard, but good online presence can make the one chance ahead for you to be the confident for the role or get ready for the role. And for support, yes, definitely it is very helpful. Communities are very helpful. Then we have networking opportunities for that. Okay, so the resource is developing.harvard.edu, and you can learn more about learning communities or about the communities here. Okay, so then we have a quick summary. Let me see the questions. So there are not more questions in the chat. Let's move on with the summary. Okay, so I just revise and let's tell you in a one shot that what we discussed today. So learn the basics first. It's very important. Trust me, without learning basics, if you go ahead, you might get difficulties. I usually go ahead with the basics. For example, I learned Python for 3 days. I learn all the basics and I move ahead and I face those difficulties. Yes, it's true. Then practice on your favorite websites. Be consistent. Consistency is very important. Then don't forget to build projects. And I think building projects is a very good way to master a new programming language. It doesn't applicable to the Python and any other programming language. So don't worry about errors. Errors are common nowadays. And in the developer community or for developers, better use of internet. This is the most also the more important. Better use of internet means that in the Google type Python or the tutorials for the Python, the projects in the Python, and I usually found a lots of exciting projects which built by the Python community and uploaded to the YouTube platform. So there are the lots of projects available, and you might get few information from that. And then we have expanded knowledge and the field of interest. Yes, expand your knowledge and the field of interest. There's let's say you learn Python and then you need to move one step ahead. So what I do actually, I tried a little bit of web development and app and machine learning, and I found my interest basically in the machine learning. So it doesn't mean that I don't like web or anything and thing, but I like it. But machine learning is the kind of the place where I can do the futuristic things, something like that. Okay, so I have a question. Do you have any recommendation for a IDE for Python? Is VS Code okay or is PyCharm better? Okay, so it's kind depends on person to person. For an example, if you have a high-end machine, if you have a MacBook or a better-end Windows laptop or a better-end Linux laptop, you can use PyCharm for that. It is very professional, and I think the most of the companies use PyCharm rather than using VS Code because PyCharm is specifically built for Python, and the PyCharm professional version is a step ahead to that, the community version. So I recommend you to use VS Code because it is very easy. And once you learn the basics of the Python or a little bit ahead of the Python, start working on PyCharm because in the future you are working or dealing a lot with the PyCharm. So it is very okay to use PyCharm or VS Code. It depends on person to person, but I recommend to use VS Code if you are a beginner, and if you are a like a kind of a advanced, you can use PyCharm for that because it's not a very it's very the UI is very easy, but it doesn't mean that, and it doesn't very interesting for newbies because they have a lots of functions available like debugging. There are lots of terminals, and it's load your laptop so our machine it's your machine can get badly harmed for that. Your CPU get defected for if you have a low end laptop. But if you have a good laptop, you can use definitely use PyCharm because it's a better option. But there are the two conditions: if you are newbie or doesn't have a high-end laptop, use VS Code. If you have a if you are a newbie and you have a good end laptop, you can use PyCharm. It's a very good option. All right. So back to the talk. Then I'm talking about engaging in communities. So as we are talking in the Code Bar Festival, so this is also community, and engaging in communities can be beneficial for you. For an example, I'm going for the PyCon Italia in upcoming months and maybe in the June. So it's very beneficial to go in such of conferences or talks and to provide and share the information to the another developers, then create a network. Create network is don't exactly help you in the your learning state, but it definitely help you when you are looking for a job role because creating a network, you have a good amount of online presence. So I knew the lots of people in my community are they have a strong online presence and they get a job. Okay, so in the last, yay, thank you for that. Okay, so thank you. If you have any question, you can ask. And here is my Twitter handle. You can also ask there. If you have any questions, please put there in the chat section. Yes, Brian, it is very good. If you're familiar with the Python VS Code, you can definitely go ahead with it because there's a lot of extension and customization is available. And learning IDE is also a skill, but it's my IDE skill you need in the stage when you're getting job ready for that because most companies use the professional IDEs, so you might get familiar with. But if you're a newbie, VS Code plus extension is okay for everything nowadays. But if you're Python and very deep dive into the Python, you can use PyCharm. And let's divide this the VS Code for beginners and PyCharm for very highly professionals. Okay. Thank you for the appreciations.